think just to give a little bit more context on the Fumba City project, which once again, Mark and others who are directly leading it can speak more to, but really what we're talking about is building out a full satellite city for the main Zanzibar town, which itself is already over 1 million people and one of the fastest growing cities on the continent as well, in a already designated special economic zone south of the town, which is basically this whole peninsula that's illustrated here. And this satellite city would target at least 80,000 residents, over the next 25-year period, and really be a hub and a focus for knowledge and blue economy development. And as I said, this is already actually within a special economic zone that has existed for many years, within Zanzibar. And so, to just touch on a little bit more, I referenced this. Zanzibar has this very rich, illustrious history as an autonomous region and as part of many different trading empires, and has really been kind of the hub for commerce in the region, or really was the main hub for commerce in the region until relatively recently. And so you have this rich culture and this history that I think endows, even the spirit today as now kind of an international tourist destination, but with this rich practices and heritage when it comes to trade and development as well. And so really, if you look even at the direct connections, the infrastructure that exists today, there are actually more direct flights, believe it or not, from Zanzibar to the Middle East and Europe than there are from Nairobi. And so that kind of connectivity that's come up, there's a new airport terminal that's handling a lot of this, run by DP World, by Dianata, which is the Dubai airports company. And so they're really kind of ramping up with a lot of the development and the connectivity, once again, mainly driven by tourism, but I think it's a big opportunity for broader economic development as well, which is something the government has really made as a priority to diversify beyond where they currently are with a more tourism-focused economy. So, just to talk very, very quickly, so Silicon Zanzibar is really about how can we achieve and position and build a leading tech ecosystem for the broader African continent by having policies that are really the most tech-friendly and the most attractive that exists today. And this is really because I think, as E and others mentioned earlier, technology is in fact, the fastest growing industry in the African continent. It's gone from, in 2016, $500 million of yearly investment to, by 2021, over $5 billion. So you really have, no other industries that have 10x'd in that kind of 5-year period. And, but at the same time, you don't really have, that many jurisdictions that have really targeted attracting and building out tech ecosystems. You hear a lot about agriculture, you hear a lot about mining, and that makes sense because these are large established industries. But really, when you think about the future and the rate of growth, technology is really, I think, where there's a huge opportunity for individual African countries to position themselves as leaders, as hosts, as supporters of that industry, especially because technology is not limited by borders. You can build an app here in Rwanda and have that functional and be distributed across all 54 countries. And so I think a similar thing, there's an opportunity for somewhere like Zanzibar to also be able to position itself as an attractive place for top tech talent, for companies to be able to base themselves. And indeed, this is what we're already seeing in terms of over 250 companies that have been registered under the program, and legislation that's specifically being passed to support the tech industry within Zanzibar over the coming year as well. So I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark and let him talk through the rest of the context here.
Great, thanks, Daniel. So I only made my first trip to Zanzibar in February of this year. I had met Daniel through mutual connections. He invited us there, introduced us to Sebastian, who runs Fumba Town. We gave a short presentation on the work that CCI was doing, and Sebastian was like, "Great, this is exactly what we need." So when you look at this peninsula, the entire peninsula is about 3,000 hectares. In the upper left corner, that kind of lighter patch is Fumba Town. It's about 20 minutes south of the airport, about 30 minutes south of Stone Town. And like many other African cities, it faces large population growth. It faces, unlike a lot of other places, it's become a very attractive destination for foreign investment. So within the last decade, they've liberalized foreign property ownership, and it's seen a huge boom in tourism because of that. That's why we see all the flights, the new airport terminal. So there's a lot of tailwinds behind Zanzibar. And like has been discussed for the past few days, there needs to be more economic diversification. Zanzibar is heavily dependent on tourism and some raw commodity exports, but they don't do much processing. There's a small amount of knowledge work there, but it can be much greater, right? And so thinking about how to use Zanzibar as a test case for many of the ideas that we're talking about over the last few days, I think is pretty high leverage, because there is a government that's open to new ideas. It is relatively autonomous. It's a small country that has government officials that are a little bit more welcoming to investment than might be in much larger jurisdictions where the government officials just have a lot more to do, right? And similar to a lot of other African cities, there is a large infrastructure deficit, right? Stonetown is lovely, but when you drive outside Stonetown, you drive through lots of informal settlements, many of which don't have water, sewage, electricity, or if they do, it's intermittent. And so figuring out how to tackle this large infrastructure deficit, there's 800,000 new urban residents in less than 20 years, right? That's a huge number. It's almost doubling the size of Zanzibar City as it exists today. And so how do you create frameworks to manage that growth more effectively, to create more opportunities for the average Zanzibari? This is Stonetown. Stonetown is lovely to visit, walk through. It's got these kind of winding streets, lots of small shops. When I visit in the next few days, I'm going to make sure I get something for my niece and nephew. So the opportunity is CCI working with CPS that has developed Fumba Town to partner with ZIPA, the Zanzibar Investment Promotion Agency, which controls a special economic zone on the peninsula, to build a modern city with a world-class business environment, right? So the location is great. It's close to Stonetown. It's close to the airport. CPS has already done the hard work. They've already built 600 units. They're building a lot more. They've created a small community there of a few hundred people, maybe up to 1,000, depending on the time of year. And so it has all this momentum behind it. And the question is, how can we take that momentum and create a framework to expand that momentum across the peninsula? And what we're looking at doing is, right, creating basically a set of urbanization services, right? How do we make sure when investors come and say, I want to build something on the peninsula, we give them the framework. We say, here's a one-stop shop, right? You'll get all your permits here in 2 weeks. Oh, you need infrastructure. We have water utility. We have electricity, et cetera, right? A lot of these investors are already going to Sebastian and CPS saying, hey, we want to build on the peninsula, but we're in a new environment. We don't know exactly how to do it, right? Like, how can you help us? And by creating this partnership with ZIPA, with the Zanzibari government, we can formalize a lot of the informal arrangements that are already occurring and accelerate investment on the peninsula, attract more capital, create more jobs, and create a sustainable urban future for Zanzibar. We're focusing on 3 pillars of growth. Light industry, right? Creating a lot of these jobs in the blue economy, in processing. Zanzibar has a lot of seaweed production. We met with entrepreneurs that are figuring out how to scale that up to provide, what's it called? Biosynth. Basically a kind of fertilizer substitute to large farms across Africa. The knowledge economy, right? Wasoko is already headquartered there. Zanzibar is a lovely place to live. And we believe that by creating a community there, we can attract a lot of knowledge workers throughout East Africa as well as the world to locate in Zanzibar, right? The African School of Economics is opening a campus there, and the Indian Institute of Technology opened their first overseas campus in Zanzibar. It opened 2 months ago. So you already have the university base that's forming for the knowledge economy. You have the climate, you have the environment, and we are building the community to attract these people. Lastly, of course, tourism, right? You've seen the beaches, not much more needs to be said. So the picture on the left was taken from Fumba Town, from the night restaurant that everybody hangs out at. Picture at the right is also Fumba Town. All right, I think I'm running out of time, so let me run through these a little bit more quickly. So here I think this is really important, right? Figuring out how to partner with the Zanzibar Investment Promotion Agency to implement the one-stop shop that already exists on paper, right? How do we create the actual building where all of those government officials are? How do we ensure that when investors, when developers go, all of their permits and papers can be processed in a short amount of time instead of having to chase down different government officials in different locations, often of whom have other responsibilities that are competing for their time and attention. And when we think about, right, you've seen the urban plan, but when we think about developing an urban plan for Fumba City, we think about creating a framework for that plan. Right? Cities are dynamic, emergent phenomena. It's not like we're going to develop an emergent plan and we know exactly what's going to be built in 25 years. What we want to do is develop a framework, develop the guardrails within which the urban expansion can naturally develop. That way we can allocate land to the highest use. Some people might want to do residential, some people might want to do commercial, some might want to do industrial, and that should be ultimately determined by the market. So how do we develop a plan that allows for flexible land use policies that change over time, while still ensuring we're in keeping with the government's vision, with the needs of the local community? This is Paje, one of the best beaches I've been to in my life. And so please come learn how to kite surf. It's a lot of fun. And I think with the SPV, the one thing I want to focus on in the SPV here, the partnership with government, right? First, when we approached government, we said, hey, how about we partner, the peninsula's 3,000 hectares, how about we partner on 700 hectares? And unfortunately, the government had already allocated much of that land to other developers. So we said, okay, right, you don't have that land, it's not available. Let's start with a smaller amount, 100, 200 hectares. But allow us to incorporate additional land with the consent of the landowner. So if somebody has land and they say, hey, look, right, we want access to the urbanization services, to the infrastructure, to the one-stop shop that this partnership is providing, then we will have the ability to incorporate that land. If there's a population on that land, then the population would have to vote to make sure that it's consent on all levels of affected parties. But allowing for that natural expansion, we believe creates the framework for land agglomeration in scenarios where it might be very difficult to get the scale of land necessary for a true new city development. And so we hope this can be a model of partnership to partner with various landowners to ensure that they have access to infrastructure as well as governance services to attract the capital to create the jobs necessary to succeed over time. So what's been accomplished? Almost all of this is, well, not almost, all of this is CPS, right? CPS has been working there for almost a decade. They've turned what was effectively Bush into a thriving community, 600 residential units, several restaurants, very successful companies headquartered there, soon to be ASE headquartered there as well. The Indian Institute of Technology is just a 5-minute drive away, and the land prices have increased as a result. And they're the most successful developer on the peninsula. And so by partnering with them and by partnering with the Zanzibari government, we can really scale this up, create a successful secondary city for Zanzibar City. So what are our goals? Our goals are a replicable model for urbanization, right? Zanzibar, to some extent, is easy compared to a lot of other environments that you've heard people speak about today, right? Zanzibar has a lot of tailwinds. There's a lot of investment moving. People want to live there. It has great connectivity. It can attract digital nomads who can afford a higher price point to start. And so we can use that to build out a model that once we know how that model works, we can extend it to other places that face greater challenges, that aren't as attractive to digital nomads, that don't have as good connectivity. Once we figure out how to push the price point down to make it more affordable for the average resident, that's something that we can scale up in other locations. Currently, in Fumba Town, I'm renting a 3-bedroom for about $800 a month. It's very affordable for me, but for the average Zanzibari who makes about $2,000 a year, it's not affordable for them. So one of our goals is going to be to figure out how to push the price point down over time. Right? Every 2 years, see if we can drop the price of a new apartment 10, 20%. It might take 5, 10 years to really be affordable for the average Zanzibari, but that's the only way we can really scale up and provide these urbanization services to the people that need them most. Lastly, what's important is figuring out how to partner effectively with the government on the special economic zone. The government is open to new ideas, but like many governments, they have a lot of priorities and they don't have the manpower to fulfill them. So figuring out how to partner with them effectively so we can work with them to create the framework to help implement some of their policy objectives in the special economic zone, we believe can be a model to be used in other places. Lastly, they have cats. I just spent 2 weeks in Istanbul. Istanbul has great cats. The cats in Zanzibar might not be as great, but they're still pretty great. And here's my email. Here's my Telegram. Zanzibar is pretty great. Please visit. Shoot me a message. We're happy to host you. Thank you very much.